This was His Mysterious Ways that we ran not too long ago. And it's from Deborah and Bob Davis in Shreveport, Louisiana. And Deborah and Bob were on their dream vacation in Europe. In fact, it was the last day of their dream vacation. And Deborah and Bob go up to the airline counter in Munich, Germany, getting ready to book onto their flight back to the United States. They were going to fly from Munich, I think, to Dusseldorf, and then on to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta back to Shreveport. And even though this had been the best vacation of Deborah's life, she really wanted to get back home and sleep in her own bed. Have you ever felt that way at the end of a great vacation? You've had a wonderful time. Even if you've ended up here at Silver Dollar City and it's been the best day of your life, you want to get home and sleep in your own bed. Well, that's the way Deborah felt at the time. And the lady at the airline counter says, "I'm sorry, but your flight has been overbooked, and you're not going to be able to make it on." Have you ever had that happen to you? Have you ever shown up and found out that the seats that you had thought you had, you didn't have? Well, that's what happened to Deborah and Bob. And Deborah was very upset because she wanted to get home. And Bob said, "Listen, honey, let's take this as a blessing from the Lord, and we'll have one more day in Europe to spend, and we'll get on the flight tomorrow," because they guaranteed that we'll get on tomorrow. So Deborah thinks, okay, that's true, and I have more pertinent things to be worried about. Deborah's son Joe was serving with the 82nd Airborne in Baghdad. Joe had been scheduled to come home to North Carolina to Fort Bragg on a leave for some time now. Here comes that train again, speaking of travel and being on time. So she'd been very worried about her son Joe, the lieutenant with the 82nd Airborne. And it was going to be a very brief deployment back into the United States for some retraining. Deborah wasn't even sure she'd get any time to even spend with Joe. But she was very concerned about him getting home, and she hoped very much to be able to see him. And so when they got back to their hotel in Munich that night, she emailed Joe's wife, Monica, and said, "Monica, have you heard anything about Joe and his leave, or is he going to get back?" And she emailed back, no, it looks like Joe's been delayed again. The Army's not going to let him come back quite yet. And she signed it with one of those little frowny faces that people put onto emails when you get them, when the news isn't always good. So anyway, the next day, Deborah and Bob do get on a plane, and they get back to the United States, and they're in Atlanta waiting to make their connection onto Shreveport. And what do you know? The weather's bad in Atlanta, and their flight is delayed. And it's delayed, and 1 hour goes by, and 2 hours go by, and it goes from one gate to the next gate. Do you ever have that experience? Like you run around the airport to different gates looking for where your plane's going to take off, and you don't know when it's going to take off? So finally, Deborah gets to the third or fourth gate that she's been told the plane's going to take off from, and she sits down, and she's about had it. I mean, she's ready to start bawling right there. She just wants to get back to Shreveport. She's mad, she's angry, she's mad at God, she's mad at the airlines. Why does this have to be so hard? And she looks up, and there from one of the gates comes a group of soldiers coming off of an airplane. And she thinks suddenly, with a little bit of shame, those soldiers are coming back from a war. All I'm coming back from is a vacation. Why should I be complaining? This is a little nudge from the Lord telling me how blessed I am and how lucky I am and how grateful I should be for the blessings in my life. So she's beginning to feel a little better about this, and she thinks that the soldiers are a little sign from God to remind her of how fortunate she is. And her husband nudges her and says, "Deborah, look at those soldiers. You see the soldiers coming off that airplane?" She says, "Yes, of course I see them. It's a wonderful sight." He said, No. I mean, do you see the soldier coming off of that airplane?" And she looks up, and there she sees him. And all of a sudden, all of those delays and all of those misconnections across all of those miles and all of that time, suddenly it all made sense, because the soldier coming off that airplane was her son Joe. And it was an example of God's perfect timing. And we don't always know exactly how things are being scheduled, but we do know they're being scheduled for a reason.